My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show, where I'm bringing you tried and tested advice to help your online business without any of the bullshit. I'm really excited about this episode because this is something entirely new as a format for this show. I am taking your listener questions. Put a shout out on Instagram and I got a bunch of awesome questions in. So we probably got like 15 minutes or something of recording for this episode. I'm going to try and answer as many as I can. I'm going to have to try and be concise. This is not one of my strong points, I've learned. But yeah, there's some great questions here. So we're going to dive in. Just a caveat in being the honest entrepreneur after all. I don't have like a word for word script, but I often have like bullet points and that kind of thing for these episodes. This is completely unscripted. I screenshotted a bunch of your questions, and so most of them I've forgotten. I'm going to have to literally do this on the fly. So wish me luck, and I hope the answers are helpful, guys. Okay, so Quito Design, spelt with a C, asks, is a poor post better than no post at all? This is a really great question, actually. You never want to put out a poor post, but I feel like this is actually an excuse that people use because they can't think of anything to post, or they don't want to go through the effort of posting and that kind of thing. So what I think a lot of people would write off as a poor post could be useful. And I did an episode recently talking all about content and how sharing your truths and your journey can be a really powerful thing. So by poor post, you mean something that isn't like completely polished and perfect, then yes, you should be putting out poor posts that are less polished. If by poor post, you mean something that's going to damage your brand because it's like terrible information or it's hideous if you're an artist or whatever, maybe not. But for me, the best kind of content is just that sharing. It's that sharing and that openness. So I know stuff has happened to me today where if I made the time, I could turn that into a meme or an Instagram TV video or a quick audio clip for a daily podcast or a PDF, like all these kinds of things. There's always stuff happening in our days which we can turn into content. And so I would implore you to think less and to do more. Stop overthinking your content. It's okay to have the kind of evergreen types of content that are really polished and perfect and you put hours and hours into them. They're great and they're kind of like the main pillars of your content strategy. But I think you should absolutely surround that with tons and tons of micro content, which is done more on the fly. Like, for example, I used to pick up my phone, and now we're cutting out segments from my show and they're subtitled and kind of more perfect. But I used to pick up my phone, do a selfie video and be like, here's what I learned today. And that would be my piece of content. Is that poor quality content because it doesn't have the production value or the planning or the foresight? I don't think so. And I think you can do that on the fly. And I think when you employ some of my tips in my recent episode about content of listening to your audience, that can be great. You could literally be like, oh, someone just asked me this in the DM. So I picked up my phone and I answered their question for the masses. You know, that stuff works really well. Debbie Sementelli, who you guys should definitely check out. She's an awesome brush lettering artist, very, very talented. Debbie asks for a podcast on time management, including handling social media and actually getting work done. Yeah, time management, that is a tricky one, Debbie. It's something which I definitely haven't perfected myself. I'm trying a few things, and for me, what's never worked has been the hacks, where it's, I don't know if you know the Pomodoro technique and that kind of thing, where it's like you work for 8.5 minutes and then juggle for 2 minutes and then jump, you know, all those kind of attractive sounding hacks that are fashionable. They've never really had longevity for me. There's a few things that work. So what works for me is time blocking and doing this the night before, especially on a Sunday night where I can kind of plan my week out. So time blocking is huge. That's where, say on a Wednesday night before I go to bed, I know all the stuff I've got today. And if I start Thursday and my calendar is a jumbled to-do list, I won't get that much done. But if I block off virtually every hour, I'm like, so 10 to 11, I'm doing this, 2 till 3, I'm doing that. And I do that for my whole day. That really holds me more accountable for just jumping from task to task to task. And I always get more done. So that's probably been the biggest thing. More recently, I have been experimenting with cutting down meeting times because I still wasn't getting everything done in a day because it's super busy right now. So what I will do is I'll schedule kind of shorter meetings, 15-minute meetings, 30-minute meetings, and try and give it a hard stop. And this is something I learned from another entrepreneur that I look up to. But if you give someone 10 minutes, you say this is a 10-minute meeting, and then it overruns, they're going to feel grateful to have gotten 15. Whereas if you give them half an hour and you cut 2 minutes early, they're going to feel kind of jilted. So halving those meeting times and kind of having that hard stop, whether you set a stopwatch or something like that, and just having the discipline to go, right, this is over, I'm jumping into the next thing. Even if it's not finished, I have to jump into that next thing, is really effective as well, because you will naturally start to get that discipline and have to force yourself to finish the job in whatever time window you've given yourself. Hands up again, being the honest entrepreneur here. I struggle with this. I'm really bad at saying no. I'm really bad at being concise, as you can probably tell from this answer. I'm really bad at just like giving a hard stop to things. That's a shortcoming of mine, but it's because if I'm on a call with someone or in a meeting with someone, I get really passionate about it and I hate to cut things short. I could talk forever about this stuff. So I definitely struggle with my time management. I know something I'm going to be trying is learning to say no more often, learning to push back, learning to be more disciplined. So that would definitely be a tip as well. I just need to live it myself first. And finally, talking about time management, you said handling social media and actually getting work done. Obviously, social media can be work, but I think a huge thing for your time is to recognize, like almost audit where your time is going and try and think what is busy work and what's work which isn't really having an impact, and what is the priority work that you should be doing. And for me, I try and do this with my team. I do it with myself periodically, say once a month, where I'm like, where's my time going right now? And do I need to shift things around because I'm not tackling the big important projects and I keep getting dragged into stuff which doesn't mean as much? A final tip, and this has been huge, is actually address processes. You probably have a bunch of processes or ways that you do certain jobs day to day. And often the process is a little bit broken, but as humans, we're creatures of habits. We just keep doing it the same way we've always known. And often it takes another person to step in, see the bigger picture and go, hold on, why don't you tweak the way you're doing that? And you would save half the time. And so that has been huge. And that's something we keep implementing where, suddenly it will take you 40% of the time it took you, but it takes a bit of upfront time investment. So, you might take half a day to fix a process, which then saves you an hour a day forever. Obviously, that's a huge net win, but I think we tend to resist actually going in and fixing the process. So kind of audit yourself, audit your time, fix processes at the source, and then time block and try and be disciplined with that. That would be my honest tips. Jazz from JH Designs on Instagram asks, what is the secret to the perfect subject line that makes them open the email? I never want to say there's a secret, to be honest, because it's an art form. What you're talking about is copywriting. Copywriting is a subset of marketing, and it is a real art form in itself. There's a whole industry around it. There's a whole trade around it. You can learn this stuff for decades. There are masters at copywriting. So I think a huge mistake is realizing, or rather people thinking that there is just a secret formula where they can drop their own subject words into it and that's going to work every single time. Copywriting, like design, like art, like marketing, like anything, you should learn and develop. If you want to get better, then take courses, read books, try different things, use trial and error, see what works and what doesn't. And I think that is the way to look at copywriting. I know my buddy Dustin Lee, who I do the Honest Designers podcast with, is one of the best copywriters I know. And funny enough, he's immersed himself in that world. Not only does he actively learn it and pay attention to what successful marketers are doing with their email copywriting, he actually looks for it everywhere. So he will look for copywriting in magazines and like advertisements from the 50s and that kind of thing. He's really passionate about learning that stuff, and that will be the best way to improve. Outside of that most important kind of fundamental learning, I would say a few techniques you could use are try and get inside your audience's head. This is a tip I often use in terms of your content, your marketing in general. Absolutely applies to copywriting too. So I did an episode about web design where I said, get to know your audience and use the language and the words and that kind of thing which resonate with them. If you were to email an email list of corporate lawyers, but you spoke like a kind of skater dude or whatever, it probably wouldn't resonate with them. I mean, it might get great open rates because they'd be like, what the hell am I looking at? But you get my point. When you speak the language, use the words and use the subject matter and the things which your audience care about, that's what's going to lead to open rates. I think that's a more long-term strategy as well. I could absolutely say to you, if you use, these 5 subject lines, you're definitely getting open. And it might be stuff that's like really shocking or about a huge discount or like, oh, you have to see this. But that stuff's very short term. And so what happens is, even if you see a temporary spike in your open rate, it will diminish your brand and trust from your audience. And so that will damage you in the long term. So like I say, it's more about mastering overall copywriting. I mean, one tip which is kind of working well for me, and I've seen this in split tests, don't capitalize the start of every word, because that makes it more like a headline and less like an actual email subject line they'd get from their friends. So actually, this is a tip I have used. Try and think what you open in your own inbox. Pay attention to your own habits. What are you clicking on and why? And what are you just deleting or ignoring and why? And I know that when I get emails, even though I know it's from a company, when the subject line is something more like what I would get from a friend or someone where I actually wanted to open the email, I'm going to be more likely to open it. When it sounds super spammy, headline, shouty, clearly an offer from a company, that's when my brain kind of shuts it off and just puts it in the spam box. So that would be my tips. I'm going to spell this out because this is a slightly awkward name to read, but it is BSSABRZS. So like bizarre burras. Sorry if I've murdered that for you. But they ask, when your family and friends don't support your entrepreneurial journey in the way that you'd like, what do you do? My immediate tendency here is to be like, well, screw your family then. They should be supportive, and reject them and go after your passion, because, you should just be yourself. And it's the same way if you came out as gay and they judged you, well, screw them. You should just be yourself, right? And I think there is certainly some truth in that approach, but I'm also wise to the fact that, I'm sure you love your family. If you feel like they're not supporting you, then just flat out rejecting them and getting pissed off is probably not the answer. I think communication always is. Often you might feel judged or not supported, and they might not realize they're even making you feel that way. Maybe they've made sarcastic remarks because they're kind of unsure. They don't know how to react to the fact you don't have a relatable 9-to-5 that they can chat with you about. So they get awkward and you say some remarks which are hurtful to you, but to them, they're trying to be funny, or they just don't know how to speak about it. There's endless scenarios which can play out here. What I would say is sitting them down and having an honest conversation about how you feel is always the answer. Just to say, guys, like, I really want to talk to you. This is not like me being acrimonious. I don't want to have a go. I really want to sort this out. For these reasons, I haven't really felt that supported in my entrepreneurial journey. I love you guys. I know you love me. And to be honest, being this entrepreneur is really scary. It's fraught with risk. It's hard enough as it is. And feeling like my family don't support me in this, really tough venture is the hardest thing of all. So I'd love to talk to you openly about that, and your support would mean the world, and it would really, really help me on this journey, because I believe at my core this is going to make me the happiest. It's something I really at least want to explore. I'm really passionate about it, and your support would mean the world. So I hope we can talk about this. That's going to be a better approach than what some people preach, some influencers online, where they're like, fuck your family then, screw them. Rachel from Free South Jersey. I didn't even need to read that. I know Rachel so well. Rachel asks what to share on my feed while I'm working on my pivot. So I know exactly what Rachel's talking about. She's part of my tribe. I've been helping her in our weekly calls. And Rachel is basically slightly adjusting and pivoting her business idea. To answer your question, Rachel, I would share the process of pivoting. Like I say, share your truth. So you don't need to keep posting something that you're not feeling entirely sure about because you're going into pastures new, and then suddenly have a big rebrand and announcement. Actually involve your audience in that transition. So openly share, be like, guys, I've been thinking a lot and I love doing this, but I think I might love this even more. What do you think? Or I love this and I think I might love this even more. And here's steps I'm taking. The same way you are with us in the tribe. You're sharing successful pitches. You're sharing stuff that went well for you. You're sharing if you're unsure or you need support or you're feeling really alive with it. Share all of that with your audience and take them on that journey with you. So it'll be a slow evolution with this pivot in your career, but with your audience there alongside you for that. That's a really cool, powerful thing. And that's more compelling content than kind of hiding it away until the big reveal, in my opinion. Rachel from Rachili, which is a great username, says, what to focus on to get more high value leads and clients. Rachel, I think there's a few things at play here. I mean, something I've talked about on the Honest Designers show is you won't really be able to convert low paying clients into high paying clients. That's a very common mistake. That's something I learned from Chase Jarvis. And it's so true. If you've got someone paying you $500 a month and suddenly you're looking to attract clients that, give you 5,000 a month, it's very unlikely you're going to convert that low paying client to the higher paying client. What you need to do is go and find high paying clients. And that's when stuff like pitching comes in. If you don't have that network already, you probably are going to have to go out and pitch and kind of go back to the drawing board in that respect. And you need to realize as well that when you're looking at higher value clients, whether you're a consultant going after high net worth individuals or an agency catering to bigger corporates instead of solopreneurs, whatever it might be, you will probably have to adjust some of your brand and your pitch deck to cater to that. So for example, when I was a web designer, I did a lot of solopreneur stuff. I was working with one man and woman bands. So I was very comfortable in that world. Whereas my business partner and creative director at my company, Matt, he ran an agency that did huge corporates who turned over hundreds of millions. And so obviously our portfolios looked very different. How we pitched clients was very different. Our whole brand ethos was very different because some multinational bank would no way feel comfortable with me there with my pretty casual approach. Whereas a solopreneur would never go and work with Matt at his shiny looking agency that was like super slick and put together. So the same way you would adjust around what kind of industry you want to target, and you would try and speak their language and do it in their style, you do that based on kind of brackets of wealth and net worth and value. So like I say, if you're going after $1 billion giants, you're going to have to step your game up because they're probably not going to want to hire solo Rachel down the road. But if you're going for something in between, then it might just be kind of dressing up like, a better process for them to work through and the PDFs and pitch deck and all that kind of thing. So I hope that helps, but essentially adjust your approach based on the value of your clients. And finally, Miranda from Pigment Calligraphy says the best way to promote a new podcast. And congratulations to Miranda. She recently launched the Chatty Calligrapher. Shout out if you're a calligrapher, go check out that podcast. And she's killing it. She's doing a great job. In terms of how to promote it, there's a billion ways. How do you promote anything? You shout about it on your social media. Wherever your audience is, if you have a newsletter, mention it there. A big tip is always mention it more than once. I think often people launch a new project like that, they mention it a couple of times and then they just kind of forget all about it or just keep putting out the show and expect people to come. So realize there's a lot of people, they will be seeing your mentions, your promotions, your content around this for the first time. So whether it's 68 weeks time or now, every day, every week, be mentioning it in some kind of new and different angle. Outside of that, again, I could list 100 ways, but I think a really effective way is think where podcast listeners hang out. Often podcasts, right? So what I'm doing for this show right now is I'm getting interviewed by a lot of people in the entrepreneurial marketing space on their podcast because it's a pretty easy jump for them listening to one podcast to jump over and listen to this one, and then if they like it, subscribe. It's a bigger leap if I was targeting people on like Behance and trying to convert them from that platform to completely leave that website and go over like on their iPhone or something, find me on the podcast app and subscribe. That's quite a big leap to expect people to make. So make it easy for them. Work out where they already are, as I say, probably listening to other podcasts, and try and get in front of those audiences by bringing value in whatever way you can, being interviewed, providing tips. A final tip could be approach people that have articles in your space. And if they're like, here's the best podcasts for hand letterers, calligraphers. Actually, sorry, Miranda, I know there's a big distinction, but let's say there are some sites with calligraphers in them. Try and find a way to get in front of those audiences. When you don't have a big audience, the answer is always try and utilize someone else's audience and get in front of them however way you can. So go and find every big site that blogs about calligraphy, in your case, and offer to do guest blogs, provide content, that kind of thing. Have guests on as well to your show. And when you have a guest on, encourage them to share the fact they're on your show with their audience. These are often, very specific podcast promotional hacks, but I would start with them and then let me know how they go. And I'm happy to give you like the more advanced round two, but there's some pretty clear starting points. So guys, thank you so much for the questions. I really enjoyed this format. Let me know in the feedback, like drop me an email, a message on Instagram or a YouTube comment. and let me know if you enjoyed it. I would love to do some more of these. Keep the questions coming, and I will absolutely, hopefully, intersperse this kind of Q&A episode amongst the regularly scheduled programming. But as always, I really appreciate you guys tuning in, watching and listening, and I will see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. Really, really appreciate you being here with me. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe right here on YouTube. Remember, tick the little bell icon so that you get proper notifications. I really hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you'll stick around for the upcoming episodes. I really want to keep bringing you as much value as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys soon.